Welcome back to X-Play's Fallout 3 special. This apocalyptic shooter marries Bethesda's style of open-world games and the 1950s retro happiness established by the original games. But like any marriage, it takes a little work and some Maryland mutant blue crabs. Fallout 3 may have a retro vibe, but its art and technology are definitely cutting edge. For game makers, going from the fantasy world of Oblivion to the post-apocalyptic universe of Fallout was a unique transition. What did you want to take from some of the previous games?
We absolutely had to have sort of the staple Fallout, retro 1950s futuristic vibe. That's something very unique to the franchise and basically sort of informs basically the whole world in terms of how it looks and how it feels.
When you said, okay, we're going to do Fallout, we're going to do post-apocalyptic, like what were kind of those aesthetic rules that you laid out?
It's 1950s, it's an alternate universe, so you don't just sort of walk down to DC and look at all the buildings and go, okay, we're just going to have all of this but destroy it. It's like, well, what would have been in this world and what wouldn't, and how do we bring out that sort of 50s influence, the Googie architecture, things where, you know, it's cool and futuristic, but it's really kind of clunky and retro at the same time.
To get the look of Fallout 3 just right, artists had to balance a Mad Max aesthetic with anachronistic charm.
You know, it is a balance to not only figure out what would have been in the world that got destroyed and what would DC have looked like as this timeline progressed before the war, and then looking at, you know, what would the world look like, how would the creatures have mutated. You know, the Mirelurks, for example, are our riff on what would giant Maryland mutated blue crabs look like.
What is sort of your vision of what the world of Fallout is?
It's post-apocalyptic, but it's not your sort of standard road warrior post-apocalyptic. You have to understand the world, and the world was sort of like a, you know, Disney-esque world of tomorrow. That's what got nuked. So it's a little bit road warrior, but it's also a little bit, you know, like Leave It to Beaver.
We actually, oddly enough, we found the more we destroyed it, the cooler it looked. You know, if we could show a hint of something that existed before, and then if there's like giant rubble.
In order to keep the game's look fresh, developers set it in a completely different location.
Usually you think of sort of out west, California desert, Mad Max kind of environment, and that's when you think of a barren wasteland. That's where it starts. And we actually, you know, moved the location of this game someplace new, to the East Coast. It's got a different feel to it.
In terms of technology, the developers at Bethesda have valuable experience under their belt. Oblivion was an astoundingly complex game that appeared on several platforms.
What is the tech that we're looking at there? So you have this amazing draw distance, and it has this amazing detail right up in front of you.
In Fallout, we are basically taking the Oblivion tech and then building on top of it and taking all of those learnings to figure out, you know, here's how we blend textures to make things load in better and to draw further out and have the frame rate be, you know, what's probably twice as much stuff on the screen running at a faster frame rate than it was in Oblivion, simply because, you know, we've been working on these platforms now for years, and the freedom that the game allows you is being able to convey that visually.
It looks like designers have good reason to be pleased with the results.
In a bombed-out, decimated Washington, D.C., most of your weapons are handmade, cobbled together from, well, whatever you can find. Railroad spikes, rocks, teddy bears, made extra deadly thanks to VATS. Here's a closer look at Fallout 3's Instruments of Death.
You can't talk about Fallout 3's combat and not start the conversation with the Vault-Tec assisted targeting system. VATS allows the player to slow down time, choose a target, and achieve some very bloody results.
So let's talk about that combat, because that's another huge difference. That's not just the guns from what you're used to in Oblivion or any of the Elder Scrolls games, but it's the VATS system that you have added in a kind of turn-based element into what is functionally a real-time shooter.
In real time, trying to target somebody's arms can be pretty difficult. They're moving around, you're trying to get your crosshairs on it. VATS allows you to pause all of that, queue it up, and then it plays it back in this really fun cinematic mode that lets the actions play out in kind of a cool way. So you can go into VATS at any time, but you can only perform actions when you've got enough action points. So you use it up in VATS, and then you have a period of time in real time where you have to wait so they can come back. So you're sort of balancing how much do I want to do in real time, how much do I want to do in VATS.
And the other thing is, the combat gets pretty heavy on you sometimes, and we didn't want someone who's just good at like a Call of Duty or a Halo to enjoy the game. And the VATS targeting system kind of hopefully breaks that down and makes someone who's not good at that stuff, makes their character on the screen, you know, a complete badass.
Okay, let's talk about some of the weapons in the game. What are some of the variety you're going to see?
We still have all of the different types from the original game, so we have a nice mix of small guns, things like pistols, big guns, things like the Fat Man and the rocket launcher, energy weapons, melee weapons, unarmed weapons, which doesn't sound exactly right, but you do have unarmed weapons that you can use.
Unarmed weapon?
Well, you get things like the power fist, just punching people in the head and using your power fist to punch their heads off.
What are some of the more interesting ones that you have in the game?
The rocket launcher, which I know you like. There are only certain things you can put in it. The damage is based on, the weight and velocity of the thing. So teddy bear is actually hard to kill somebody with. The railway rifle, that's the one you can build that shoots rail spikes. It's got the good train whistle sound when you shoot it. And it pins limbs to things when you get criticals.
Now, I think it brings us to something that we've noted many times. It is a very violent game.
Yes, we just were like, we need to ludicrous speed on the violence. Violence done well can be really, really funny, but we try to make it over the top so that you're kind of in on the joke. When a guy's head blows up, his eyeballs are a bit too big and his optic nerve's a bit too long. It's just a ton of fun.
Tons of bloody good fun. I can't wait to start splattering everywhere.
Kaboom! Well, that about does it. Thank you to everyone at Bethesda for taking us inside this amazingly gory world.
And rather destroyed world as
Yes.
well. Gory and destroyed. All right, up next, we got more X-Play. You must have maxed out your luck stats.